Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. It was so awesome talking with you guys this weekend. If you happen to miss it, on Sunday, October 26th, the members of the Drop Dead Serious Club joined me for one of those Ask Me Anything sessions. And we talked about everything from which cases have affected me most in my 38 years of covering news and mostly true crime, as well as how to handle criticism and how I've dealt with it over the years. And of course, the Bachman Turner Overdrive concert that I just went to on Saturday night. Awesome. I met Randy Bachman backstage. So life goals achieved. It was really, really nice to invite you guys all into my home and just shoot the breeze for an hour. Thank you so much for coming out for that. I'm going to start doing it a lot more, too, for members of the Drop Dead Serious Club, like a couple times a month. So if you haven't joined yet, just hit the button on your screen. You can hear Atlas telling you to do that, too. I think he just woke up for a minute to clear his throat. You can also click the link in the description of this episode. If you want to check out the session that we just had over the weekend, it is also available under the memberships tab on YouTube. As for tonight's episode, I am really glad that you are here because there's a case out of California that has really gotten under my skin, and I am dying to know if you guys feel the same way that I do about it. It's about a missing girl and a mom who doesn't seem to care that the rest of us are really upset about it, especially the fact that her family and the police are looking for this little girl, and mom ain't helping. It's giving serious vibes of another story that I began covering over a half decade ago. And here's how that story started. With 2 children nobody could find and a mother with no explanation. There was a deadline to produce those children, but it came and went with no answers and still no child. When we jumped on this story years ago, the uncooperative mom was named Lori Vallow. There was a boy whom Idaho police were desperate to find. His name was JJ Vallow, age 7, whose grandparents hadn't seen him in months. But investigators quickly discovered that JJ's big sister, Tylee Ryan, was also missing. A court gave Lori Vallow 5 days to prove that her kids were alive and well, and I do not have to tell you that she didn't and couldn't because they weren't. Vallow had taken off to Hawaii with husband number 5, Chad Daybell, whom she married 2 months after the kids were last seen and 2 weeks after Daybell's first wife mysteriously died in her bed beside Chad. Lori was out sunning herself by the pool with Chad when police came to Hawaii and approached her with a subpoena, and it was all deliciously captured on body cam.
Mr. Vallow, you can serve.
Do you have any questions regarding that?
Do you need something?
Any questions?
You have any questions for that? No? Okay.
And if you remember all of this half as well as I do, I am sure that you hoped never to see a story like this again. And yet here we are, with a mystery surrounding a 9-year-old girl named Melodee Buzzard of Lompoc, California. That's about 50 miles west of Santa Barbara and about 150 miles west of LA. We have been on Melodee's story for over a week now. She was reported missing 2 weeks ago tomorrow, and today it is October the 27th as I'm recording this. School officials were the ones who actually told police that neither she nor her mom had been in to pick up her school assignments. Ashleigh Buzzard, her mom, had signed her daughter up for independent learning in August, basically homeschooling. So when police went to the family's home, they saw Ashleigh, but they did not see Melodee there. They said Ashleigh had, quote, no verifiable explanation for the little girl's whereabouts. And just like Lori Vallow, Ashleigh Buzzard was stonewalling Melodee's extended family members, too. So you should know that Melodee's dad died in a motorcycle accident when she was just a baby. And his relatives say that they had not been allowed to see that little girl in years. On Friday, we brought you a potential breakthrough. Police released some surveillance photos of Melodee. It was Melodee with her mom at a car rental office in California on October the 7th. Weirdly, Melodee, the police said, appeared to be wearing a wig. Detectives say that both Melodee and her mom got in that rental car and drove as far as Nebraska, but that Ashleigh brought that rental car home 3 days later with no sign of Melodee in it or anywhere else. That was October the 10th. Police were brought in by the school district on October the 14th, and this mystery also had a deadline. It was reported last week that Ashleigh, just like Lori Vallow, was given a deadline to produce her daughter. This time, 72 hours or else. Now, we and a lot of other news outlets reported that detail, but we all later learned that it didn't actually come from the police. That ultimatum didn't come from the police or from the courts. It instead came from Child Protective Services. So I have to be honest with you. It's entirely unclear to me, to my staff on my NewsNation show, or to a lot of other journalists what this or else actually meant. Because last we checked, there was no arrest warrant for Ashleigh Buzzard and still no trace of Melodee. And that whole 72-hour business, that is long come and gone. I should note that it took weeks to arrest Lori Vallow. But Lori had amscrayed to Hawaii. So she's in another state, 4,000 miles away. It's a little tougher. Melodee's mom, Ashleigh, she's home for all we know. She's right there in Lompoc, California, back in this family home that many years ago was filthy, with a fridge full of rotting food and complaints that she might have actually been feeding the child the rotting food. My guest on this episode lived through every second of that kind of a nightmare, and he fears for what might have befallen Melodee. Colby Ryan is Lori Vallow's eldest and only surviving child, who in the months before JJ and Tylee were found, was begging his mother to produce the kids. Tell the police where JJ and Tylee were. Didn't work. Lori wouldn't. Colby has since picked himself up out of the emotional ashes of where that family story took us. Multiple murder convictions for his mother and that new husband of hers. And Colby is soldiering on in life without his mother's horrendous baggage to drag him down. He's made that decision. He launched a YouTube channel where he talks openly to his viewers about the personal cost to him and to other victims' family members who suffer in the wake of crimes like he has. I talked to Colby Ryan earlier today on my NewsNation show on Banfield, and I am going to share with you the conversation that I had with Colby Ryan. But before I get to that, I first want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting this podcast, and I know my guy Atlas is very thankful as well, because as you can see, and maybe you can hear it in the podcast, he gets the best naps when I'm in the studio. And I love giving you a little show every so often of what he's up to and which position he's taken to sprawl out and just snore. I also have to thank my sponsors because they make this possible as well, like Incogni. Let's face it, I cover some pretty dark stuff, you guys. But I have to be honest with you, some of the worst stuff out there, the scariest stuff for you, that's happening quietly behind your screen. Your name and your phone number and your home address, your personal details are all floating out there online. And it ain't because you gave it away. It's because somebody sold it. They're called data brokers, and they are tracking you, and they know what you buy. They know what you search for. They even know what meds you take and what school your kids go to. And now with AI, it's like handing a loaded weapon to a scammer. Imposter scams are on the rise. They use AI to fake the voices of our friends and family, and then one phone call and suddenly we're giving money to somebody who sounds exactly like our kids or our moms. It's really chilling stuff, but here's what most people don't know. You have the legal right to make data brokers delete your info. Yes, you have that right. Problem is, it could take years if you're doing this yourself. And that's why I use Incogni. They do all that dirty work for me. They go straight to these companies and they demand that my data is removed. My personal data is removed. And they'll do it for you too. They even offer a custom plan called Unlimited, and all you need to do is flag a site that's exposing your info. Boom. Incogni's privacy team goes right after them directly. This is not just peace of mind. This is power. So if privacy matters to you, and it should, go to incogni.com/dropdead, and I got you 60% off. You just use the code DROPDEAD and get your discount. Again, that's incogni.com/dropdead and use the code DROPDEAD to get 60% off and start taking your data off the market today. Okay, back to the case and my conversation with Colby Ryan. And by the way, he's got a YouTube channel called Colby J. Ryan, and the link is in the description in this podcast. But I really wanted to talk to him about this Melodee Buzzard missing persons case, right? I wanted to know from his perspective as a guy who's lived through it, what parallels he sees to his mother, Lori Vallow's case, and the case of his missing siblings, and whether this particular case gives him any kind of gut feeling. Here's our conversation. It's good to have you on. I've been thinking a lot about you as I've been covering this Melodee Buzzard story, and I just wanted to get your take on what you think of the developments so far.
Well, first of all, it's heartbreaking, and when you see things like this, when it comes to children, it's always extra scary. And the similarities immediately ring to me, where a parent should be able to show you their child within a couple of seconds or know where they are at all times. The fearful thing is seeing them for a short amount of time and then them disappearing and all the families wondering, just the similarities are scary. I will personally tell you that I hope that is not the case. I never want to see what happened to my family repeated, but it's hard to hear it because there's, for me personally, just too many similarities.
Do you have a gut instinct on what's happening in the Melodee Buzzard story?
I'll tell you that as a parent myself, I could tell you where my kids are 24/7, no matter what's going on. I know where they are at all times, even if they're at school, and it should be very easy to be able to tell anybody where your children are. So I don't have a gut feeling, but I do feel uneasy about it.
Yeah, I've had a bad feeling since day one. I thought there's just no way that a mom wouldn't just put people at ease over something as important as a little girl. Here's where I'm confused. It doesn't feel, to me at least, that it's being considered an emergency by the police. And I'm wondering if you got that feeling when you and Kay Woodcock were trying desperately to get the police to pay attention to Lori Vallow, your mom, and find out where your siblings were.
Yeah, I think the police, it was hard for our case because you get so many new departments involved, right? It's Arizona, it's Idaho, it's all over the place. And then they're looking for Lori and Chad. So yeah, there is urgency. You need to have urgency for a child like this, but I understand that in some circumstances, the police hand could be tied in some ways. But when it comes to children, I think the priority goes to a very high level, and it has to, because their safety is important. And, the police sometimes they're just tied and they can't do something about it.
So, you know what, that is a really good point. And I want you to just pull on that thread a little for me, because you've mentioned in the past that when kids are taken out of the system, like this little girl was taken out of the school system and they were homeschooling. Now, the school system did its level best, right? They didn't come and pick up assignments for a few weeks and they reported it. But it really complicates the process when the child isn't doing what every other child is doing.
Right, exactly. And, especially if a parent takes their kid out of school or moves or whatever the case is, when they go somewhere else, you don't know, the teachers aren't going to know who they are. They're not going to know that they're missing from another place, right? So it's complicated, but now that everyone's looking and trying to figure out what's going on with her, it just makes it even more confusing, because it really ultimately comes down to where is she and why is the mom not speaking on it? Like, why would that be a hard thing to produce your child?
Were you surprised at all that I mean, for me, I just don't understand why they haven't broken down the door. I always feel as though if there's a child missing, worried relatives, and an intransigent mother who has been caught in the past in a circumstance where her home was so derelict and the food was rotting, and the grandmother thought the rotting food was being served to the child, there's a background, there's a history. Why aren't they breaking down the door, considering this to be an exigent circumstance? Are you feeling the same way?
What I'll tell you is, I mean, obviously the human in you agrees 100%. You have to also just look at, I think, what is the legality of all? I don't know that answer. In my case, we already were told that they were missing. And then it's just this wide search of so many people getting involved. And that's when you're holding out hope. And you're always, as a family member, going to hold out hope that it's not the worst case scenario. But, you know, we have our own version of justice versus what justice looks like in the actual justice system. And I think it can be different for us as the public versus what they have to do to get to those answers.
Also wanted to ask you about this whole difference between the 72-hour ultimatum that was handed to Melodee's mother, Ashleigh Buzzard. 72 hours, produce the children or else. And the or else, I just don't know what that or else is. Originally, we thought she'd be hauled off to the county jail. That the ultimatum for your mom was 72 hours or we'll put you in cuffs. And ultimately, they chased her to Hawaii and they put her in cuffs. Do you have any thoughts on this very unusual CPS process?
I don't know how the CPS worked exactly. I mean, I know in our case that they did go get Lori, and she needed that because she did have an ultimatum. She had a deadline. She needed to meet it, and she didn't. And the only reason she didn't is because she literally couldn't. Now, in this case, you want to hope and pray that that's not the same thing. You hope and pray that this is not the same scenario and that there is something else going on. And, you know, to all of her family members, I would be the same way. You hold out hope to the very end and you keep praying that it's not the worst case. So I don't know too much about the CPS system, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm just sort of flummoxed and bewildered by it because I thought you give someone an ultimatum and there's a consequence, but I just don't see that playing out, certainly not publicly. If it is playing out, they're holding their cards very close to their chest, which makes me fear there's more to this investigation than just a missing child, and God forbid it is a murder investigation. We don't know that to be true. Your thoughts on on the process your mom was going through when she was saying to you, don't worry about it, the kids are safe and happy, when in fact the children had already died. Was she lying to you, or was she lying to herself and believing her lies herself?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, honestly, she was lying to herself. I don't think she fully believes in her own story, but I think that is her protecting herself from the reality of what she's done. And I don't think she's changed in a very long time. So, you know, when it comes to her specifically, she's a very, very different person. And I'm sure anybody who's watched her or listened to her speak, you can tell she's a very, very difficult person, and you know, she's dealing with the consequences, but she thinks she's being wronged, right? She thinks that she did nothing wrong, and in her mind, she loves her kids, and so she has this very special case, in my opinion. But it's unfortunate because I've seen some other cases like this where the parent can't produce their child, and you know, there's always something going on mentally with the parent that I've noticed. So it's scary. You don't want anything to happen to children like this.
Well, and we've heard from the extended family that Ashleigh Buzzard, Melodee's mother, has had some severe mental challenges in the past, whether that's still ongoing. It does sound like it from the descriptions, but we aren't being told any diagnosis. What advice do you have for the extended family members of Melodee Buzzard who are desperate to see that little girl?
You hold out hope no matter what. And as bad as you think it could be, as scary as it is, as many questions, as much as you go back and forth in a 24-hour period, you hold out hope and you pray and you don't give it up. And until you know what has happened, you hold out hope. That is my advice, because you don't want to make the scenario in your head, but I don't know if people realize what a prison it is to be scared for someone you love, who, especially a child who can't take care of themselves. But honestly, you just hope and you pray. That's my advice.
Well, conversely, what's your advice for the police in Lompoc, California, who are presumably spearheading this search?
I mean, I'm sure they understand that this is a 9-year-old girl, and you have to take it seriously. But I don't know what their process is, and I don't know what it takes to get all that legal stuff done. I'm not educated in that, but you have to hope that they continue investigating and hopefully find her as soon as possible.
Colby, how are you processing everything that happened with your mom?
Yeah, it took a long time, years of trials, years of pain. And, now I'm in a place where after it's all kind of settled down, I've been able to refocus on my family, focus on my personal healing and growth, and, trying to make the best of what life is. You still have a life to live after tragedy, and, try to help inspire as many people as I can, and hopefully be able to give some positive message in all of this darkness, because most people see the darkness, they see the headline, they see what this is, but there can be, a life after all of it. So for me, it's just been focusing on my family, healing, and trying to help others when I can.
Listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining me on this topic. I sure hope we have a conversation in the future that's a positive one about Melodee Busby, and I really hope it's not the gut feeling that we have. Colby Ryan, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
So here we are again, another mother, another missing child, and a deadline that has come and gone. We have seen how the story can end, and nobody wants to believe that it's happening all over again. If Melodee Buzzard is alive, she deserves to be found. And if Melodee Buzzard is not alive, she deserves justice. So we are staying on this case until we get answers. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and remember, the truth isn't just serious, it's drop dead serious.